Hi everyone, Nigel Saunders here. Welcome back for part 3 of my bonsai show trees for 2018. I'll begin today by pruning back my Serissa forest. It's grown a lot in the last few months. These trees are styled to look like the African acacia trees. Before I start pruning the trees, I looked through all my reference pictures of acacia trees and I picked out my very favorite one. It's a blurry picture, but it has a really nice shape to the upper canopy. I'll be studying the proportions of this tree and applying it to my miniature bonsai. Today I'll be doing some midsummer work on my trees to get them ready for our club's fall show. This coming up here today in the Bonsai Zone. Here's a picture of the tree I really like. It's got a nice sort of triangle shaped upper canopy and a very flat line underneath the canopy, so there's a distinct division between the foliage and the branches. So if we take the trunk diameter as 1, the overall height of the tree is 7.5 times the trunk diameter. The height of the canopy is 2 times the trunk diameter, and the overall width of the canopy is 19 times the trunk diameter. So these are some basic proportions that I'll try and copy in my miniature tree. It's time to check the proportions of my tree now. I'll set my calipers to the thickness of the trunk. About there, I would say. So that measurement works out to about 2¼ centimeters. The overall height of the tree should be about 17 centimeters, which would bring it to about here. So I'm a little high with my tree, but that's good because the trunk will thicken up over time. The overall width of the canopy is the length of the ruler plus this much. So I'm pretty close to the correct width, so that's good too. Because I'm high with this tree, when I prune the upper canopy, I'll try and get it as low as I can and still keep my branch structure. Because the show is still over a month away, I can use my scissors and do a hedge style pruning to the canopy. All the leaves that I cut in half will fall off and I'll regrow new ones. So here I go. I've got all the wild shoots pruned back now, so now it's time to prune it down even further. I'm going to try and get this height as low as I can. Once I get the height in the middle correct, I can then taper the sides to get my triangular profile. I think I can still come down a little further in the middle. This tree is very vigorous, so if I were to prune the canopy down to just the woody parts, it would regrow new foliage very quickly. I've got the middle of the tree pruned to the right height now, so now I'll start tapering the edges. At the moment, the canopy is very rounded, so I'll try and get a more triangular form this time. Getting quite close. It's still a little rounded, so I'll just try and flatten out the curve a bit. The canopy is pruned now, close to its final form. So I'm going to go above and look straight down on the tree and prune it to an oval shape. Any shoots that are sticking out like this one will get pruned off. So I'm just going to prune it to a oval shape. So I think that looks pretty good. I've got my oval shape here now. If you look at pictures of the acacia trees, the canopies can come in many different styles. Some can be quite rounded, some can be very thin, others are very full looking. So I want to prune all my other trees in this forest planting so they all look a little different. I don't want them to be just duplicates of the main tree copied. I want each tree to have a little bit of individual style. To get forest perspective, I'll prune the trees that are furthest back down the shortest. So I'll just do a rough pruning for now. Kind of to a flat top canopy. Somewhere about there. And now I'll come up front and have a look at it. I need a little more off this tree. And now I'll make this tree shorter also. Some of these cuttings are recently planted, so they've got a long way to go before they start to look like miniature trees. I'll do the same for these trees. I'll prune the profile so there's not branches sticking way out of the profile. I'll come above and start pruning. I think in future I will have to move this tree over a bit so it's not under the shadow of the main tree. I'm going to clean up all the clippings and then stand back and have a good look at the planting and decide if I need to do further pruning. I'm going to come in now and clean up the structure of some of these trees. I'm standing back, having a look at the overall composition. I think my tree needs a little more pruning on this side. I have pruned it to a triangular form before, and it quickly got rounded again. Just the natural growth pattern of the tree. So I think I could take a little more off that side. It's a little high compared to this side, and it's a little too rounded. So I'll do that. That's looking better, much better. I think the profile's as good as it can get on the main tree right now. I want to take the one tree at the back down a little further. Yeah, that looks a little better. Gives a little more perspective to the planting. I've taken a little more off some of the trees near the back. Looks a little better. I was inside comparing the canopy of my bonsai tree to the acacia tree in the photograph, and I'm still too high in the middle, and it doesn't taper enough to the edges. So I'm going to try and bring that height down even further. So here I go. I think that's much closer to the profile in the photograph now. It will be important to keep the trunk clean of moss before the show so you don't get any discoloring at the base of the tree. So we'll just give that a clean up today, picking off any moss, and I'll get out the toothbrush and I'll brush off the algae. You can see the importance of getting that nice radial root base. It's really starting to flare at the base of the tree and getting a really nice nabare. I'll be doing more work to this tree before the show, getting all the details just right, the moss and all the stones and everything. But for now, I'll put it back on the bench and we'll get out our next tree for our club show. The next trees I'll be working on today is also an African landscape. It's my Portulacaria afra forest. I've been pruning this forest to get ramification and density in the upper canopy of all the trees. Today I'll just be doing a light pruning getting all these long shoots reduced down to the first pair of leaves. So here I go. My goal is to keep the canopy on these trees nice and compact and not let the trees get too tall. For a light trimming, I seem to have pruned a lot off, but the trees look a lot better now. I keep this forest in the greenhouse to keep it out of the rain, and it is quite dry right now, so I'm going to give it a good thorough soaking with water and fertilizer. I'll let that soak in, and then I'll give it another water. I give my succulents a thorough soaking, and then I let the soil dry out completely, and then I repeat the cycle. If I leave them outside on the bench, the rain interrupts that wet and dry cycle. That's why I keep them in the greenhouse. My goal with these trees is to get them to look like the giant African baobab trees. So I'm going to put them back in the greenhouse and we'll get out the next tree. My next possible show tree is my Ficus microcarpa, the one I call Fancy. This tree was repotted this spring, and I always pile the soil up a little higher than normal to make sure all the roots go down into the soil properly until the tree recovers. So today I can rake away all this excess soil and try and level out my soil line. So here I go. I'll start at the front and rake the soil away. You can see a lot of surface roots that have grown into the top layer of soil here. You can see how the perlite goes dark on the surface. It gets algae buildup on it. There's a weed in there. Yeah, the algae build up and it turns kind of a greeny color. So it's not quite so noticeable on the surface of the soil. I've got the soil raked away from the roots. So now it's time to go and prune the canopy. I'm not going to prune the canopy too hard. I just want to prune back these shoots that are growing really vigorously. I think I want my apex to be somewhere about here. So I can prune these branches off somewhere around here. I've got the canopy pruned down in height. So now I'll go in and prune away any branches that are crossing or pointing towards the inside of the tree. There's a branch here that's pointing straight up, so I'll prune that away to create a nice flowing branch line. I'll give the tree a good watering and then it can go back in the bench. In part 4 of this series, I'll be working on a lot of my smaller trees, getting them ready for our fall club show. I'm Nigel Saunders. Thanks for watching today here in the Bonsai Zone.